Okay, I think we're all here. So, hi everyone, thank you for joining. I hope you got my message about being armed with a drink or a cup of tea or coffee, because this chat's probably going to be around 35 minutes or so. And then at the end, we'll open up for a Q&A after a tiny little break. So, yeah, go now if you need to grab something. And in the meantime, I'll give it a quick little chat on housekeeping. So I've got everyone muted at the moment, and I'm also recording this. So that is mainly one because for the people who can't make it live, they're going to get a recording. But if you guys also want a recording to listen back to anything, or if you've got to nip out halfway through this and you can't make the whole thing, then you can get the recording. Just let me know and I'll post it in the group. So for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Miles. I'm a PT and a holistic transformation coach. And for many years, I've worked in areas like sports performance, corrective exercise, lifestyle coaching for many different health conditions. And I also teach Eastern practices like Qigong, Tai Chi, meditation, and breath work. So these days, I work with a lot of clients by bringing all of that together into one integrative system that I call 5-element fitness. Because a lot of the issues I see aren't really solved by one approach. They require a holistic, multifaceted solution. And the reason I wanted to run this session today is because I keep seeing the same pattern over and over again with many of the women I work with, online and in the gym, which is that they're capable professional people, they're working, they're looking after families, they're trying to stay healthy, they're trying to stay fit and lose weight, but they feel like their body just isn't cooperating anymore. They feel tired all the time, they're wired at night but exhausted during the day, the muscles feel constantly tight, their sleep isn't great, their mood feels just a bit unstable and off-center. And they often start wondering, is this something like deeply wrong with me? Is it just stress? Is it just hormones? And often the issue is something a bit deeper and something a bit more consistent, which is what we term nervous system burnout. And that's what we're going to explore today together. So what I like to normally start with is something I call the stress sink analogy. And by the way, sorry if I'm taking sips of water, I'm mic'd up, so it may sound quite aggressive as it comes through, but one of the biggest misunderstandings about stress is that people think it just comes from one big thing, one big event. But that's rarely how the body experiences it. It often does. You can have one traumatic event. But a lot of the time what we're talking about today is this just consistent, low-lying, under the bonnet issue. And a better way to think of stress like this is like multiple sinks filling with water. So imagine you've got 5 sinks in a room, bathroom, kitchen sinks. And one sink represents work stress. Another might be poor sleep. Another represents emotional stress. Another might be poor nutrition. And another one, too much training, overtraining in the gym. And each one is slowly filling up with different amounts of water, depending on the individual. But none of them are individually overflowing and causing a scene. But eventually the combined volume across all the sinks becomes too much for the system, and somewhere something bursts and a pipe leaks there's a system fault. And that's exactly how nervous system burnout develops. It's rarely one dramatic event. It's the accumulation of multiple pressures across the whole system, which is why the solution and the fix has to be multifaceted. It has to involve many different areas. And so I call this nervous system burnout, I call it the invisible pandemic. Very few people really understand nervous system burnout. It seems to be a trendy buzzword that gets thrown around without any depth to it or understanding. And part of the time it's when people think about the body, we've been trained and conditioned to usually think about muscles, organs, bones, hormones. But the system that actually coordinates all of these together is actually the nervous system. So what actually is the nervous system? Well, it's the brain and the spinal cord which forms the central nervous system. And from there, millions of nerves branch out of the brain and the spinal cord and go throughout the entire body. And these nerves reach every organ, every muscle, every gland, every blood vessel, and they regulate everything from movement, digestion, heart rate, hormones, immune function, sleep, circulation, which I'll talk about a bit later, and energy production. And, you don't realize how much everything is controlled by the nervous system. I remember when I was learning my craft, and I was doing some corrective exercise with functional movement systems ages ago. And Greg Cook and his team used to call muscles dumb, which they are when you think about it. They don't decide to do anything. They don't decide to contract. They don't decide how much force to generate. They don't decide timing or coordination. It's the nervous system that tells them, because each muscle is innervated, which means it has nerves going into it. And it's the nerves that tell the muscles when to fire, how strongly to fire, how long to contract. And the same is true for the organs. They have the nerves going in, giving them information. So when the nervous system becomes overloaded, burnt out, dysregulated, everything downstream and that is connected to it also feels the effect. And Paul Chek, an American holistic teacher, calls the body a cybernetic system. And what he means by that is that everything is interconnected. Like a spider's web, if you touch on one side of the web, it's going to be felt the vibrations all the way across the whole thing, because everything's interconnected. If one part's under pressure, the rest of the system feels it. And you don't need to have a degree in medicine or, health to understand this. And again, that's the problem with the West. With every setup in the West in medicine is about isolation. You go and see the physio for this, you go and see someone else for this, you go and see got a problem with the heart, you see the heart specialist. Everything's specialized into its own isolated faction and area. And no one's really looking at how everything interacts and interrelates together. And so if you take, for example, the brain, if you've got something wrong with the brain, then everything in the body that's associated with that, which is pretty much everything, is going to feel the effect. If the heart's not beating properly, then none of the tissues, organs, or anywhere in the body is going to be receiving the right blood supply, and therefore oxygen and nutrients, etc. If the liver, which is the detoxification organ, if that is not performing well, then everything is going to be under a lot more stress. And if the lungs aren't working properly, then none of the tissues and the blood is going to receive enough oxygen in order to run the system properly. And the nervous system sits right at the center of all of this, innervating all the muscles, all the organs, all the glands. And it is the controller, the puppeteer. So another reason nervous system burnout is often missed is how Western culture understands stress. In the West, we tend to think stress is mainly psychological. So we think stress means overthinking, worrying, anxiety, mental pressure. But biologically, the definition of stress is much broader. Stress is any demand placed on the body. And so it's not just the mind, it's the demands on the body that can also completely stress out the entire system. Remember, it's only the West who believes the mind is separate to the body, and neuroscience is starting to blend the two together quite rightly. So anyway, things like poor sleep, blood sugar instability, chronic dieting, overtraining, inflammation, dehydration, too much booze, too much caffeine, emotional pressure, all of these stresses on the body, there's no difference between them. The body doesn't differentiate between all of those things I've just mentioned. It just reads it all as stress and therefore activates the stress response. So someone might go to the doctor and say, I feel exhausted, I feel anxious, I feel wired, I can't sleep, I'm tired all the time. And then the explanation or the outcome might be, oh, okay, well, maybe it's your hormones. Maybe it's the perimenopause. Maybe it's anxiety. We'll send you for some blood work. But often the real issue is simply that the nervous system has been under too much pressure for too long. And it's like everyone else is looking in the wrong place. So let's have a quick think about what happens inside the body when we talk about the nervous system. So it's got two main systems or modes. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, and the other is called the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is known as the fight or flight. It's all about urgency and immediate action. And the analogy that's always used is of like the caveman walking behind a rock and seeing a saber-toothed tiger and suddenly having to run or fight. And in that moment, the body's going to release a load of stress hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. And the system's designed for short bursts of stress. And it'll shut down loads of different systems in the body that don't need to be active. That's only relevant to fight or flee. So it'll shut down digestion. If you've just had a meal and the blood's all in the intestines and the abdomen, it'll say we don't need that to be digesting food. We're going to push it out to the muscles to help fight or flee. It'll shut down the immune system briefly. It doesn't need to be fighting a cold. We'll use that energy elsewhere. So it's a real survival-esque mode, and it's designed just for short activation, not long-term, under the surface, constant activation, which we see these days, and it's especially what's happening with nervous system burnout. So on the other side, we've got the yin to the yang. We've got the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is the body's recovery system, otherwise known as rest and digest. So it's all about recovery, repair, digesting food, balance, hormonal balance, looking after sleep. And so burnout really occurs when the sympathetic system, the fight or flight, stays activated too long without recovery from the parasympathetic. And eventually the body just becomes exhausted with too much sympathetic activity. But paradoxically, it can't relax either, which is why so many people say, I'm totally exhausted, but I can't switch off and I can't sleep. And if everything was in working order, a correct balance between those two modes of the nervous system, you could go out and have a really hard physical day, working on the land or on a farm or, in construction, anything. And or be mentally tired from a day of meetings or with kids, etc. And you can come home and get into bed and be totally exhausted and sleep like a baby, because the sympathetic knows when it needs to go down and the parasympathetic comes up at the right time. But if the nervous system is constantly switched on and buzzing away in the background, like zzz, that's keeping every cell, every organ, every gland on edge and awake, which is why it's so crippling and exhausting. So two other things I want to speak about, which may or may not be, can be down to it can be down to the nervous system, it can be down to other things, but tight muscles and poor circulation. So if you've got cold hands, cold feet, tight shoulders, tight neck, tight back, that could also be a sign that the sympathetic nervous system's been activated, and the fight or flight response, which is designed to increase muscle tone and redirect blood flow. Now, of course, tight muscles can be you've just been going to the gym a lot and you've actually shortened the muscle and it's become tight. You could have a muscle imbalance where your posture's off and your shoulders round forward, your head drops forward. Therefore, all of the muscles in your neck and the traps are under a lengthened and are presenting as tight as well. But also, it could be due to the nervous system. So when you're in the fight or flight, blood is prioritized away from the extremities to where it thinks it needs it most, which is the brain, the heart, and the large muscles ready for action. So the quad muscles and, into the biceps and, the shoulders. And therefore circulation right to the extremities is reduced. So therefore that's where we get potential Raynaud's and, cold fingers and the tips going white, etc. poor circulation. And also muscles, what it does is it creates low level contraction in the muscles when we're in fight or flight. Because you don't want the muscles all completely relaxed, like at a 0, and then they've got to suddenly put the accelerator on and ramp up to like level 100 in order to fight and be tense and strong. So when the fight or flight system's activated, it'll take that nice relaxed muscle and it'll just put contraction in it. So instead of going from 0 to 100, you're at 60, so you just have to go 60 to 100. Which obviously is useful when you need to fight or leg it. But when you're just at that low level contraction in all your muscles all day, every day, then you get a lot of tightness and issues in the muscles, which isn't a mobility issue. It's a nervous system issue. So stretching alone won't fix it, because the problem isn't the muscle, it's the signal being sent to the muscle from the nerves. Now, also, it'd be rude not to mention the good old brain in this, because the brain uses so much energy. It's only about 2% weight-wise of our body weight, yet it uses about 20 to 25% of the body's energy. So when the nervous system's under constant stress, the brain burns enormous amounts of energy, which contributes to brain fog, mental fatigue, sugar cravings, low energy, indecisiveness, not being able to make quick decisions. And so this is often the moment when you go through all the symptom lists that a lot of people start to recognize, oh yeah, that's me. You know, clients often say, especially when I wake up tired, I rely on coffee to get going, my muscles are always tight, and or my hands and feet are always a bit cold, my sleep's terrible, my mood feels unstable. And if several of those sound familiar, it's not multiple issues. It's often one umbrella issue presenting as multiple symptoms. So it's because your nervous system's just been under pressure for too long. And, you know, I've been saying women a lot. I see a lot more women with it. I'm not saying men don't, but I believe there's a lot more women suffering for it because, one, they're hormonally different, and also culturally at the moment, their identity and treatment has been a lot different. And what do I mean by that? I mean, many women today are doing just so much more than men. I mean, they have careers, they're looking after the households, they're looking after the children more. They're also trying to get into fitness. They're trying to do life admin as well. And many fall into the same cycle, which is that coffee to wake up because they haven't slept well, sugar to keep them going, calorie deficits because they want to lose weight, high intensity workouts because that was plugged for the busy, time poor woman, you know, who needs to be working out as well. Random, quick and easy on the go, ultra processed snacks, wine at night then to relax, poor sleep, rinse and repeat. And it's the perfect storm for burnout. And most health advice doesn't really gear up to fix it. You know, as much as social media is throwing these things at us, a quick supplement isn't going to fix it. Doesn't matter how many magnesium pills you munch at night, you know, it's not going to really get into the nitty-gritty of the underlying nervous system. Getting extra steps in, you know, going from 8,000 to 10,000 isn't going to fix it. Jumping in an ice bath isn't going to fix it long term. Barefoot grounding, you know, as much of all of these could be quite good and shoehorned into your program, you know, pushing these one single things isn't going to work. Burnout is a whole system issue, which means it requires a whole system solution, which is exactly why I built the 5-element fitness framework, which is what I use with clients who come in with nervous system issues. So what are the 5 elements? I'll quickly explain the 5 sections I use and that a lot of people, I think, should get on board to use in order to fix some of these underlying conditions. The first one is movement. All 5 is movement, energy cultivation, mindset, nutrition, and strength training. So movement isn't just exercise. It includes posture. It includes walking. It involves mobility and stretching. time outdoors in nature. It involves looking after and using tricks to increase circulation. And believe it or not, many burnt out people are actually too sedentary, or the other way, overtrained. So both create problems for the nervous system. And what the body really needs is a regular natural movement pattern that works the cardiovascular system without stress. Remember, cardio stands for cardiovascular. I know it sends shivers down most people's spine, and when you say cardio, people think, oh, slogging it out on a treadmill, smashing it on the rower, or doing a spin class. But we want the ability to train and maintain the inner pipe works, the arteries, the heart, etc. Just we need the correct dosage and the correct intensity in order to leverage the stress that you're experiencing. That's movement. Energy cultivation. This is the pillar or element which is almost completely missing from modern Western health culture. And it's a cultural thing. It's in the West, we are culturally conditioned to focus everything externally. You know, our whole society is built on competition, performance, overcoming, dominance, hierarchy, especially in the workplace and in sports, achievement. Our sports culture is all about overcoming the body, no pain, no gain, pushing harder, grinding through fatigue, training until exhaustion. There's weird philosophies that we had going, from the Thatcher era of like, you only need 4 hours sleep, which now we look at and think, God, that's ridiculous. But whereas in the East, they've got a completely different approach. They work from the inside out. They focus first on breathing, internal balance, internal energy flow, nervous system regulation. They realize that you can't be fried internally and knackered with low energy and poor breathing and the internals are all wrong and expect a decent external performance. It just, it doesn't really add up. So they have practices like Qigong and Tai Chi and stuff, which they design so that after practice, you feel more energized, not completely rinsed and depleted. And so their goal isn't to beat up the body. The goal is to restore the system. And sleep is a major contributor to this element. So is breath work, which is funny because most women, when I measure their breathing patterns, present with 2 dysfunctional ones as well: vertical breathing and what's known as paradoxical breathing. So one of the things that we do the most consistently all day, like breathing almost every second, is actually negatively impacting their health, their musculoskeletal system, your posture, your nervous system, your oxygen delivery, and therefore as well mental clarity. So it's a really important element. We also look at one of the best and oldest methods to calm the mind that's been used for millennia in lots of different traditions. And also we use other tricks that help energize the mind and body and not deplete it. So that's 2, energy cultivation. The other one is mindset we want to look at. Actually, energy cultivation and mindset, they're just so devoid of most people's programs. Most people, the herd has got its head around, we need to look after our nutrition. We need to train the body for strength. We also need to train cardiovascularly. But coming to philosophy, mindset, belief system, and working on our energy is just a little bit too fringe at the moment. So my job is to get everyone to embrace it because it is so useful. So mindset, burnout. Burnout is amplified by how the mind processes life. Your belief systems and how you use your mind is so important. You can have the best training program, the best nutrition, the best everything. But if the mind goes wonky on you, then it's going to kibosh everything. All of those plans will be defunct. So overthinking, over-planning, constant responsibility creates massive overwhelm. And many female clients feel they must control everything and do everything perfectly. And so part of the recovery to this is learning clarity. It's learning boundaries. It's learning or refinding purpose, and also a surrender to life. And philosophy, as I said, plays a huge role here. For thousands of years, traditions like Stoicism and Taoism have explored and practiced the art of reducing psychological suffering. So they speak about letting go of perfection, releasing control, accepting uncertainty, going with the flow, working with life rather than constantly fighting it. And these perspectives can change belief systems and remove enormous pressure and psychological burden from the nervous system. So again, it's such a useful element to get involved with and tread. And all of the elements are interrelated. And just like the heart, the brain and the lungs, when I talked about the interrelation and interrelatedness of them earlier, and how if one goes down it affects the whole system, each one of these things will completely affect the other elements. If your sleep is off, then the next day your nutrition's off, your mindset's off, your strength training will be off, your cardiovascular will be off, your breathing will be off. And if your nutrition's poor, and then you haven't got enough energy and you're eating sugar or booze late at night, then your sleeping's off, and then each one of these elements, if they're not up to par, will sort of, you'll feel the effects in all the other areas. So anyway, number 4 is nutrition. This also includes hydration. The nervous system is extremely sensitive to nutrition. So common problems people experience are blood sugar crashes, under or overeating, constant snacking, dehydration, excess caffeine, excess booze, or addictive eating patterns. Again, sugar. Lots of women, have a slight addiction to sugar. Not saying men don't, of course they do, but there are definitely patterns that we need to try and unpick. Also, even things like mild dehydration can reduce cognitive performance by 10 to 15%. So, if you're starting the day with lots of caffeine and we're finishing it with lots of alcohol, and, we're taking on foods that, are sort of needing or dehydrating us throughout the day, we'll find that that's also another secret invisible pandemic. Most people are probably chronically dehydrated. So anyway, stable blood sugar, correct macros and micronutrients for your body and proper hydration allows the nervous system to function much more calmly. This doesn't mean you can't have booze. You're going to have to give up sugar. You're going to have to give up caffeine. You're going to give up takeaways. We're not saying that at all. We need to find the appropriate dosage for you, which is goal driven and not taste driven, or I just want that now driven because, I need it. I need it because I'm stressed. So we've got to work out a good nutrition plan. And lastly, strength training. So strength training is extremely important, especially for long-term health. It improves your metabolism, your bone density, your insulin sensitivity, confidence, as well as posture. A lot of imbalances in the body won't fix themselves through stretching or just sleep. You need to go in and find the muscles that are weak and upgrade them. And that is going to have the flip side with those muscles that are long and taut and presenting as tightness because they're trying to hold up an imbalance in place. They will relax once the weakness has been upgraded. So a lot of the times when people think they need to stretch more, they don't. They actually need to get into the gym and eradicate some imbalances. But anyway, also the appropriate strength training, not constant exhaustion. So many women and coaches are still stuck in that HIIT style training model. So that HIIT, that high intensity interval training, which a lot of the group classes used to do. Fast, intense workouts designed for the time poor, come and get stronger. But because the rest breaks are so small, you're not actually training strength, because the strength systems of the body, again, you don't need this for now because it's a bit nerdy, but the creatine, phosphate and the glycolytic system, they need a bit of time to recuperate. And if you've only got like 10 to 20 seconds rest, then even up to like 45 seconds of rest is too short. You're not training strength, you're training endurance. And so you'd be going into these classes hoping to get stronger, and you're just doing an endurance class on an already tired and stressed out nervous system. So it's just stress on stress. It may feel like a good workout when you leave, but it'll come and bite you because the nervous system will just get more and more depleted. The other thing I see in the gym with a lot of female clients, so this may resonate or not, but is that when you're ready to go, some people, they're ready, they're all in. And that again can be a problem because you've got the guilt of when you've been off and you've been in a slump. So having weeks when you've just been so busy and stressed and tired and you've been off the diet and you haven't done as much exercise and you're feeling guilty, and then suddenly the sun's shining and you've had a good weekend, you're like, right, I'm ready to go all in now. And so a client will come and they'll go, right, doing PT with you on Monday, Tuesday I'm doing Pilates, Wednesday I'm doing body combat, Thursday I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm now on like a protein special slim diet shake thing. I'm smashing supplements, blah, blah, blah. And, they're going all in and it's too much. They just crash hard. And again, it's too much on the nervous system. We need to stop these like highs and lows and have a more of a consistent, scientific, clever approach to it. And also you've got to remember, recovery matters. Most people don't realize that the actual gains made from strength training and training happen during the recovery period. If you've done the job well, you've got micro tears in the fibers of the muscle, and they need to rebuild back stronger. When you give them rest and you give them the proper nutrition, those micro tears grow back twice as thick and stronger. Therefore you gain muscle, and that happens, in multiple fibers throughout the muscle. So if you don't rest and recover and look after those tears, it's tear. All that's going to come is injury, mass amounts of fatigue, and an overstimulated nervous system. And that's what the bodybuilders used to get a bit wrong, because they'd think it's all with a mindset of just muscles and nothing to do with the nerves. They thought, oh, we can get away with working or training most days of the week if we just check a board and do different muscles on different days. They'll go chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, legs on Wednesday, shoulders on Thursday, arms on Friday, and think that's okay. But there's no nervous system rest there. So you can end up completely frying the system and actually think you're doing good and being restful. So sometimes women don't need more punishment or intensity. They need a proper training program. Now let's have a quick chat about Qigong, because Qigong is made for this. It's so powerful. It literally translates as energy work. It combines slow movement, breathing, relaxation, and inner awareness. Qi stands for energy, Gong stands for skill or work. So it's energy work, and it works directly on the nervous system. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which shifts the body into more of a parasympathetic state. So that's pro-recovery, which we learnt before, that rest and digest mode. And Qigong doesn't try to force the body to heal or anything. Instead, its job is to release tension in the body and mind and allow the body's natural intelligence and energy to take over. So think about it this way. When you cut your finger, who heals it? You don't consciously have to, look at it and go, oh, I need to heal it. You may chuck a plaster on it, but then you leave it, forget about it. And the next day or 2 days later, when the plaster falls off in the shower or something, you realize it's completely healed. And so you're not doing any of the healing. Your body does it. Your body's innate energetic intelligence is doing it the whole time. It's repairing tissue, it's regulating hormones, it's balancing the chemistry in the body, it's restoring the equilibrium, it's looking after your digestion, it's looking after the heart beating and the lungs doing their job. So it's always there working. It knows exactly what to do. Our job is just to simply create the conditions where that intelligence and energy can function properly. And I love using the plant analogy here because it's so true, and you probably all have heard this, but a good analogy or way to look at it is if a plant is ill, sick or dying, you don't try to fix it with a single intervention. You don't isolate one part of it and go, let's inject the leaf with some nutrients, or let's open it up to have a look in the stalk. You just look at the whole environment and change it. So, you change the soil, you give it some water, you maybe put it out in the sunlight, you get it outdoors in the air, you give it the nutrients from the improved surroundings, and therefore you improve its environment and the plant naturally heals itself. And the same's true for the human body. We need to improve its environment by changing your sleep patterns, getting out and doing more movement, giving it the right nutrition, changing your breathing patterns, doing some strength training. And therefore, when you get better mental clarity, the nervous system actually relaxes and allows the intelligence to come through. And within a few weeks, by looking after the nervous system and the whole body holistically, you notice better sleep within weeks. Better sleep, more stable energy, better mood, improved circulation. Then it's after a few months that the deeper systems are going to begin to turn over and change, where hormones will stabilize, inflammation is going to reduce, and your systemic energy will return. And that body just simply knows how to return itself to balance. So in the 5 element system, we typically run it for a minimum of 5 months to get a full reboot on. But it's individually determined. So some clients are in it for less, some more, I've run it up to 8 months before. It just depends on how much your body needs to transform and heal the deeper systems of the body. As well, some of the clients are after weight loss and physique change in the gym. So that too determines how long the program will last, because obviously to build muscle for an extended period of time can actually be longer than what the nervous system needs, which can be quite quick. But everyone notices beneficial effects from a nervous system point of view within a month, without a shadow of a doubt. And it needs to be a lifestyle change that's right at the top of the priority list. We can't leave no stone unturned, because there's no point being pulled out of work with a doctor's note if someone's struggling with burnout, and getting lots of time off, lots of recovery, lots of classes, looking after yourself, walks out, walks in nature, and doing a lot of healing by removing the original main stressor, which is sort of work and lack of sleep, etc. To then, after a month or two, going back to work, not changing any systems or boundaries at work, and then 3 months later, you're back with burnout again, you're on the booze, you've got sugar binges and you're overeating, and we're back to square one. So once the nervous system returns to balance and we look after it, we need to cultivate the environment in order to maintain it. So that when people say something like, I finally feel like myself again, this time it sticks long term. So I think we're pretty much done now. So if what I've described today resonates with you guys, try and remember you haven't got multiple different issues. It's just probably that your system is simply overloaded. And the body can recover when we give it the right conditions. So there's 3 things I'd like you to take away really from today. First, you're not broken. Second, you need to work on your nervous system and you need to train it. And the third, the fix for it is often multifaceted and individual. It's going to require working across multiple disciplines to restore balance in your specific body, mind and nervous system. So anyway, thank you for listening. Let's have a quick 3-minute break and then we'll reconvene here. I'll unmute you and we'll do a Q&A. All right, thanks guys.